Hello and welcome to the programme where you can help stop crime. In the next 40 minutes you may see someone you know or something you remember. You'll see crimes in detail in the hope that you might recognise a clue. Now these are all detectives behind me, real policemen. They're waiting for your call, as are police throughout the country. This is the number, but have a pencil and paper handy if you can.
Our prime concern is serious crime, where the police have almost exhausted ordinary methods of inquiry. In other words, the ones that are the most difficult to solve. But with your help, last month's Crimewatch once again achieved real results. We showed how two armed men raided the National and Provincial Building Society at Victoria in London. Wearing masks and brandishing guns, they demanded money. But unknown to them, two cameras were recording their every move. After seeing those pictures, a viewer called in at a police station, and as a direct result of information given, one of those two men have been identified. Police are now continuing their inquiries to find the other man.
Then there was the assault on a German tourist in the New Forest. Over 100 people rang in after Crimewatch, and acting on information given by an anonymous caller, the day after the programme, a man from London was arrested. He's since been charged with rape, with robbery and grievous bodily harm, and he's been remanded in custody, awaiting committal for trial.
In Sussex, detectives are still working their way through new clues from 130 viewers who called to help solve the murder of Gary Collins, a drugs dealer from Hastings. Remember, the police promised an amnesty to drugs users who offered information, and that offer still holds. In Humberside, the police were looking for the killer of 9-year-old Christopher Laverack. They had 200 calls to follow up after the programme, but so far I'm afraid there's nothing we can tell you yet. We will, though, let you know what happens.
Avon and Somerset police had been anxious to hear again from an anonymous caller who thought that a man with a swallow tattoo on his face was responsible for a murder in Bath in 1978. After our appeal, the caller once again made contact and agreed to meet the investigating officers. As a result of that meeting, the police require no more information about the tattoo. Thank you if you called in. In fact, police have now reopened a file on a suspect they'd interviewed earlier in the inquiry. Once again, we'll keep you posted.
And finally, the Manchester bogeyman. You might remember we showed this Crimewatch video fit of a man who's been posing as various officials and stealing from people's homes. We had over 200 callers, and one perceptive viewer came up with a new clue that's led police to want to trace a man in particular. They don't know what name he's using now, but these keys belong to him. They seem to be the sort of keys you might use in a small hotel or a boarding house, so please call us if you recognise them, 01 811 8055. The key ring, by the way, is a small brass disc with the number 10 and the letter A.
Now for this month's reconstructions. We start with a crime that made the headlines a year ago, but which is still unsolved. It's the murder of a wealthy London solicitor, Janice Weston. There appears to be no motive for the killing. She had no known enemies, there were no sexual assault, no robbery. She was battered to death in a lay-by on the A1 last September. The case is baffling, but there's a wealth of clues to follow up, and detectives here tonight are convinced that if you watch this reconstruction carefully, someone will be able to provide them with at least one of the missing links.
Our reconstruction begins at 11:20 a.m. on the 10th of September last year at Kensington Tyre Motors in West London. That Saturday, Janice Weston set out to collect the spare wheel of her Alfa Romeo Alfetta car. This wheel was to become the vital missing link in the search for her murderer. Janice was seen shopping near her home at Holland Park at around midday. She was a solicitor and had told friends she'd be completing work for a client and staying in London over the weekend. Janice had been married for just 15 months to property developer Tony Weston. Together they'd bought this country house in Clopton near Northampton, which they were converting into luxury apartments. This particular weekend, with her husband away in France on business, Janice called into her office at Lincoln's Inn. The exact time isn't known, but it was sometime on Saturday afternoon. Janice was a partner in the firm Charles Russell & Company, and at 36 was at the peak of her professional career. She was successful, popular, and led a busy social life. She'd gained a reputation as an international expert on company law, and was also completing a book on a specialist interest of hers, computer data protection. On that Saturday afternoon, an eyewitness reports seeing Janice frequently looking out of the office window, as if she were expecting someone.
Hello, Charles Russell. I'm afraid he's not. Can I help you?
Police know that she was still in the office at 4:45 p.m. because she took a phone call for a colleague. Piecing together the evidence, police believe that later that afternoon, Janice returned to her basement flat in Addison Avenue, West London, and made herself a meal. But then, contrary to what she'd said to friends about staying in London that weekend, she evidently decided to leave. She gathered together the remnants of her meal, which included a partly drunk bottle of wine and a half-eaten loaf of bread, and with an overnight bag and a purse containing £37, she set off. Yet strangely, she left behind her handbag. It contained her chequebook and all her credit cards, but she did take with her the keys to the country house in Clopton. It was unusual for her to set off for the manor house alone, if indeed she did set off alone, and it would have been very uncomfortable there with the renovations in progress. Driving north up the A1 towards Northampton on Saturday night, the traffic was heavy. Police believe it must have been 9 p.m. or later by the time she reached the Huntingdon stretch of the A1. Just north of Huntingdon, only 16 miles from her country home, she pulled into a lay-by. Later, forensic evidence found traces of grease on her fingernails, which suggests that the reason she pulled in here was to change the wheel of her car. But Janice Weston wasn't alone. Police still don't know whether her killer followed her into that lay-by or had been in the car with her. Janice Weston was killed by a series of blows to the head, so ferocious that it took police 3 days to identify her. The next day, Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, David Hurst is cycling along the A1 on a 12-hour time trial for the Luton Wheelers Cycling Club. As usual, he'd arranged with his wife to give him refreshment along the route. It so happened she chose to wait for him in that same lay-by where Janice Weston's car had been that previous night.
Yeah, fine. Very cold.
Why don't you pass?
No,
Terrible.
no, I should be all right. Be all right. I'm just going to go here.
At almost the same time, just 23 miles away at Royston, a man called into CB Car's garage with an apparently straightforward request.
You make number, please? No, I'm sorry, we don't, but they do in the store next door. Thanks.
He made his way to Auto Spares, where his purchase was to become one of the most mysterious aspects of the whole case.
Do you do number, please?
Yes.
Hello.
A few minutes, so in between customers.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And number?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'll give you a few minutes.
Okay.
He didn't state what number he wanted, but handed over a scrap of paper. That number was already on police files. It was Janice Weston's number. Redhill Street in Camden, northwest London. 4 days after Janice Weston's death, her Alfa Romeo Alfetta car was found abandoned on a parking meter. Inside, police found the keys to her London flat and to the country home. They also found her purse. Nothing had been stolen. But when they opened the boot of the car, the spare wheel was missing. The tyre that she'd collected that Saturday morning had now been put on the rear near side of the car. But the other wheel was gone and has never been traced. Well, heading the investigation is Detective Chief Superintendent Len Bradley of Cambridgeshire Police. There are many, many strange aspects about this case. Have you any idea what the motive might have been for the murder?
Well, certainly I think I can rule out robbery and sexual attack. The other theory, one theory we have possibly, is Janice was accompanied along that road. They stopped to change a wheel and there was a disagreement, and then Janice was battered to death in that lay-by.
So you think she may have known her killer?
Most certainly, yes.
Who was that man at Royston asking about those number plates?
Well, this could, again, be an incredible coincidence. The man could have purchased those number plates for a stolen vehicle. And if that is the case, I hope he will come forward, because I'm not really interested in prosecuting him for or being connected with theft of vehicles. But, of course, if he is connected with the murder, then I want to know from any person in Royston who was about on that Sunday morning, which was quite a quiet Sunday, and any information will be gladly received in respect of that man.
What clues do you have about what happened to Janice's car after the murder?
Well, almost certainly the car was facing in a northerly direction, and it would either need to cross the carriageway or go further up towards the Brampton Hotel, and then it traversed the road backwards towards in a sort of different direction completely towards London, and was found, as you've said, in Redhill Street, Camden Town area, and almost certainly abandoned before lunchtime on Sunday the following day.
And what about the mystery of that missing wheel? Why do you think it is missing, and where do you think it might be?
Well, it could have been discarded in a hurry and left on the lay-by, and it could have been picked up during the night before the police were called to the murder scene, in which case I hope even that person might come forward to be eliminated from this murder inquiry.
What is distinctive about the wheel?
It's distinctive in as much as it's an Alfa Romeo wheel. It has 20 air vent holes round the wheel, and it also has the centre boss, which has the Alfa Romeo motive thereon.
So we hope somebody might have found one like it somewhere along that route.
Yes, somewhere along the route on the A1 on that weekend, the 10th of September 1983, with a Michelin tyre on.
Can you briefly sum up then what you're hoping people tonight might be able to help you with?
Well, I'm interested in tracing the man who purchased the number plates. I want to hear from anybody who saw Janice after 4:45 p.m. on the Saturday, either driving her car or in the lay-by at Huntingdon. And I also want to hear from anybody who has seen anybody acting suspiciously in the lay-by, or who may have bloodstained clothing or returned home that weekend bloodstained, or any person who might have seen any discarded bloodstained clothing.
Mr. Bradley, thank you very much. And if you think you can help, do please ring us. You can talk to the detectives here, or if you prefer, you can talk to a BBC researcher in absolute confidence. The number is 01811 8055. The lines are open now, but if you can't get through, please keep trying. Or you can call Cambridgeshire Police direct at Peterborough 63232. That's 0733 for Peterborough 63232.
Now on Crimewatch, an unusual case to say the least. It's something of a religious mystery. It's the story of someone who appears to have a grudge or perhaps needs psychiatric help. The crimes have cost almost £1 million and they've destroyed some of Britain's most important church heritage. Now, so far, no one's been hurt in the attacks, but watch what follows carefully, especially if you live in the northeast of England. You may be able to stop a train of events before somebody is killed. The view from the Wearmouth Bridge in Sunderland is almost entirely industrial these days. But where these shipyards stand now, some of Britain's earliest Christian settlements were built. St. Peter's, on the north bank of the river, was founded more than 1,300 years ago. It has a distinctive Saxon tower and some unique features that attract thousands of visitors every year. Next door to St. Peter's is a social club. Just before 3 o'clock on Monday the 19th of March, this man noticed something curious as he was leaving. At the back of the club, just a few dozen yards from the church, he saw someone crouching in a doorway. He looked round and remembers noticing the man transferring something from white bags into a holdall. Across the way are some council flats, and just a few minutes later, from a window there, one resident saw what may well have been the same man. She noticed someone crossing the road and going into St. Peter's churchyard. She remembered him as being particularly well dressed. The Reverend Martin Turner, the vicar of St. Peter's, was in his study at about that time. He was at his desk when a buzzer went off, telling him that someone was entering the church. In fact, he caught a glimpse of someone carrying a purpley-brown bag. He went back to his work, but less than 10 minutes later, he was forced to make an urgent phone call. The fire at St. Peter's was threatening the whole church. 60 men managed to contain it at floor level, but flames quickly spread from the organ and the chancel up to the roof. Two hours later, the fire was brought under control, and in the charred wreckage was a clue as to who had started it. It was the remains of a copy of this magazine, and it had been used to start the fire. Inside was an article on St. Cuthbert. The fire had been started in St. Cuthbert's chapel and on the eve of St. Cuthbert's feast day. That magazine was to lead police from the Sunderland blaze to another at Durham, 15 miles away. Again, a church was the target. Just a few hundred yards away from Durham Cathedral, on the opposite bank of the River Wear, is St. Oswald's Church. St. Oswald's is famous for its organ music. The building has fine stone features, and it's built on a religious site that predates the Norman conquest. On Wednesday, the 7th of March, an organ practice had taken place. Ironically, it was Ash Wednesday.
Fire Brigade, what is the address of the fire? St. Oswald's Church, and this is in Durham City.
At just before 4 o'clock, the emergency call was taken at the headquarters of Durham Fire Brigade. The fire at St. Oswald's had been started near the church organ, and dozens of firemen worked to stop it destroying the entire building. 20 sacks of charred remnants were collected after the fire by forensic experts, and among the blackened debris, they found what appears to be a vital clue. Again, it was a copy, like this one, of a caravanning magazine for that month, March 1984, and it had been used to start the fire. The man in charge, Detective Superintendent Arthur Meek. These magazines, how on earth could you tell they were used to start the fire? Surely they were destroyed in blazes.
One of the magazines was found fairly well intact at the Sunderland blaze. The one at the Durham blaze at St Oswald's Church was, although damaged, was identified by the Home Office laboratory as being a caravan magazine.
So whoever stole these or got them, perhaps because he's interested in caravanning, you're sure started the fire?
We're quite happy that, yes, those magazines did start the fire. They were analysed by the laboratory and found to contain petrol.
Now, what about this extraordinary collection you've brought of gas canisters? What's their relevance?
There's quite an array of gas cylinders there, canisters, and they are used for blow lamps, for paint stripping, they're used for gas stoves, for camping and caravanning, and some of the larger ones are used for home welding equipment.
Now, what relation do these have to the fire? Were they used in starting them?
Yes, we found some of them fairly well intact at the Sunderland blaze, and the laboratory again analysed some of the debris from the fire at St Oswald's, and were able to say that that is a fairly good example of some of the canisters that we used at that blaze.
Now, what about motive? There's been a controversy, of course, about the new Bishop of Durham. Could that have been associated with this?
I don't think there's any connection at all with that controversy. Obviously, the fact that there was an article in one of the magazines relating to St Cuthbert, the chapel at the St Peter's Church was in the fire was in St Cuthbert's chapel, and the link between Durham and St Oswald's, perhaps there may be some tenuous religious link. It's certainly not with the bishop.
So you're looking for anyone who was in or near either church. This is March the 7th in Durham, March the 19th in Sunderland. Anybody who uses or is known to use large numbers of different sorts of gas canisters, ranging from camping gas to oxygen, and anybody who might be interested in these magazines and a combination of the lot.
Yes, that may subscribe to both of them, and certainly if they've got a lot of canisters, it would be unusual for them to have quite so many.
Mr Meek, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, if you can help in any way, here's the number, 01811 8055, or you can ring Durham and Northumbria Police directly. The number there is Sunderland 76155. That's 0783 76155.
And now the Crimewatch Incident Desk, where we invite the police to appeal to you directly. Here are Detective Constable Helen Phelps and Chief Inspector David Hatcher.
We've three cases for you tonight. First, a crime which happened late at night near a London Underground station in April this year. The murder of 45-year-old senior Customs and Excise man Anthony Littler. With the help of a lookalike, we've reconstructed in daylight the events leading up to the crime. On Monday the 30th of April, Anthony Littler caught the Bank Line tube from London Bridge and arrived at East Finchley Station at 16 minutes past midnight. He was recognised by the station foreman as he passed the ticket barrier. On leaving the station, he crossed the road and set off home down this alleyway opposite the station. Just 6 minutes later, the emergency services received a call from someone who wouldn't give his name. He said a man had been badly injured and was lying in a pool of blood. Coming in such a short space of time, the call could only have been made from one of two phone boxes. This kiosk, which is directly opposite the tube itself, or just 400 yards away at the other end of the alley in Market Place. Did you see anyone making a call at that time, 22 minutes past midnight, on that Monday evening, April the 30th? We'd also like the other passengers on that train to come forward. In particular, a man wearing a black suit and about 6 foot tall. We'd also like to hear from anyone who drank with Anthony Littler in pubs in the East Finchley area. And of course, all calls will be treated in the strictest confidence.
It's now a month since Saturday the 1st of September when 15-year-old Mark Billington went missing from his home in Yardley, on the outskirts of Birmingham. This picture of Mark was taken when he was 13. He would look a little older now. This police reconstruction shows how Mark set off from his home in Gilbertstone Avenue, Yardley, at about 11:15 that Saturday morning. He was next seen half a mile away, here at Yew Tree, where he visited the Birmingham and Bridgewater Building Society to deposit some money in his savings account. It was about 11:20, the last time he was definitely seen. We want to hear from anyone who saw Mark at any time on that Saturday, and there are two clues which might jog your memory. Mark's blue bike has never been found, but here at Crimewatch we've had made up an exact replica of the bike. It had been painted this royal blue colour. It had a white pump and a carrier on the back. If anyone has seen a bicycle like this in the last month, please ring us. Wait, note the mileometer. It fitted on the wheel here. And the second clue. Mark was known to have spent some time that morning at the Linden playing fields flying his kite. The playing fields are right by Mark's home. We believe that Mark was with 4 or 5 other boys at the time. Now, they may not know how Mark disappeared, but if those boys are watching, please ring us in confidence. A call to Crimewatch might reunite Mark Billington with his parents.
And finally, on the incident desk, we need your help to find an armed robber who's gaining in confidence and needs to be caught fast. This is the Leeds Permanent Building Society at Roundhay Road in Leeds. And when our villain decided to raid it, he didn't account for the security camera which recorded this sequence of events. You can see the robber in the top right of the picture, and nearer the camera, the cashier who, faced with a handgun, wisely hands over the cash. By the way, the helmet the man wore was royal blue with a white peak. "13 days later, he turned his attention to another branch of the Leeds Permanent, this time on Hare Hills Lane, less than a mile away in Leeds. The attack happened at about 2:45 p.m, and this time you can see clearly what we must assume is a real handgun. And then, just 10 days ago, the man with the blue helmet, clearly set on a career in films, decided to travel further afield. This is the National Provincial Building Society in Norfolk Street, Sheffield, where he struck just after 2:15 p.m, and it was the same method of operation. After the third raid, the man drove away in this Fawn Hillman Avenger, which he abandoned at 2:30 in the National Car Park in Wellington Street, Sheffield. Now, we want to hear from anyone who saw the man leaving this car park, perhaps on foot, or maybe in another car.
Remember, it was the 21st of September, just a week ago, last Friday, and the robber was wearing a waist-length anorak with elasticated cuffs and zip front. It was blue and maroon, and his trousers were beige or fawn. That blue helmet did hide his face, but fortunately we do have a pretty good idea of what he looks like. When he bought his getaway cars for the last 2 of his raids, the people who sold them had a very good look at him, and the descriptions led to this artist's impression of him. Well, here at Crimewatch, we invited both those witnesses along, and together with the officers on the case, they developed a Crimewatch video fit of the wanted man. The computer enabled the witnesses to add features from a standard photo fit kit to the original artist's drawing, making it more lifelike and closer to their recollection. This hair came from an earlier photo fit of the man. Then, with a good black and white likeness, and relying on the memories of both witnesses, we can add colour to complete the video fit. The hair was a mid to light brown, and he had a slightly tanned complexion. He dresses fairly smartly when he's not attacking building societies. He's reckoned to be about 5'8" to 5'10", of medium build, and has a Yorkshire accent.
Plenty to go on there, and we expect results pretty quickly on this one. And if you have any information on any of these cases, do call us here at the incident desk on Crimewatch UK.
And the number, of course, is 01 811 8055. Well, now to a murder case that seems to show a sort of random violence that may well be unleashed again unless the man responsible is caught. In March this year, a minicab driver was ferociously stabbed to death. His body was found in the back of his own car near Heathrow Airport. Now, that was the second time a cab driver had been found dead in the same area and in similar circumstances.
Heathrow is on the western tip of London, a city in its own right, alive 24 hours a day with travellers and airport workers. In recent months, in or near it, 2 men have died in separate and frenzied knife attacks. Stephen Sylvester was 39. He worked as a driver for Skyway's minicabs at Kingsley Road near Hounslow East Tube Station, some 4 miles from the airport. It's a Wednesday night last November. Stephen usually worked overnight, and in the early hours of Thursday, the date November the 17th, he drove back to the office after taking a fare to nearby Feltham.
Stephen. Hi. Well, things are very quiet now. You better take over. I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
It's 2:30 in the morning. Now the controller and the other driver have gone home to sleep. Stephen's on his own. At some point between 2:30 and 3:30, Stephen must have left the office, presumably with another fare. Whether he responded to a phone call or someone visited the office is still unknown. What is known is that this was the last trip Stephen ever took alive.
Where to now, Gov?
Yeah, left to the next one.
Hey?
Turn left.
At some point, Stephen got into the back seat, or was forced there, and in a frantic and bloody attack was knifed to death. With Stephen's body in the boot, the killer then took the wheel and drove the car towards the airport. Maybe he worked there. Maybe he was flying off somewhere. Why did he head towards the short-term car park at Terminal 3? Perhaps he hoped that in a crowded car park, the vehicle would not be found. The police know that he got here at 4:05 a.m. He dropped the entrance ticket on the floor of the car. At this time of night, the upper floors are blocked off and only the ground floor is used for parking, mainly by night shift workers at the airport. Whoever killed Stephen would have been heavily bloodstained. Someone must have seen him. Did he go to one of the toilets to wash off the blood? Did he catch a plane or hitch a lift back to London or elsewhere? 4 days later, on Monday, November the 21st, police who'd been looking for Stephen found his blood-stained car abandoned in the car park and discovered the awful truth.
Hunter Delta from 572, active message over.
It seemed like a crazy but an isolated crime. Then, 6 months after the Heathrow murder, there was another killing in the same area. And it was like the first. The victim was a driver with Blue Star minicabs of Martindale Road near Hounslow West. Hardeep Sangha helped out his father-in-law, driving part-time on weekday evenings. The cars there weren't equipped with radios, so after each fare the driver had to return to base. It was Friday evening, the 30th of March this year, the day before the Grand National. Hardeep had already made about a dozen journeys that night and returned to the office to wait for further calls. At about midnight, a man rang from a call box not far away.
Hello, yeah. I want a cab to go to Feltham. Yeah, at a phone box near some traffic lights on the Great West Road. No, the next traffic lights.
At about the same time, a tall soldier and 2 young girls called at the Blue Star office. They too were asking to be taken to Feltham. Because of inconsistencies in the minicab log sheets, the police don't know which call Hardeep responded to first, the soldier and 2 girls who wanted to go to Feltham, or the still untraced caller from the phone box at the Lambton Road junction. Near the phone box is the Boom Boom Wine Bar and the Heathrow Tandoori Curry House. It may be that someone who'd been eating or drinking in the area noticed the man waiting for a cab. They may even remember if Hardeep did pick him up. It's only 4 miles from Hounslow to Feltham, and at around midnight the trip wouldn't have taken long. So Hardeep could have done both trips, or even picked up someone else in the Feltham area. The next thing that's known for certain took place on a slip road off the A30, close to the airport's southern perimeter fence. The car had run out of petrol. The killer tried to open the boot, but couldn't. He was unable to take the keys out of the ignition. He must have walked away. Perhaps he hitchhiked. The time between 12:30 and 2 in the morning of Saturday the 31st of March. Even at that time of night, the Great Southwest Road is busy, especially with lorries. Someone must have noticed the car stranded there. At 2 a.m, Hardeep was found slumped behind the passenger seat. He'd been frenziedly stabbed to death. Some credit cards were missing, along with a small amount of money. So the killer is possibly a racist, possibly a robber, apparently a psychopath. Detective Chief Superintendent John Pole is the man hunting for him. You tell me that he's tall, but you won't tell me why you think he's a tall man. And you've brought some knives. It looks like he's a knife freak as well.
Yes, that's so. This is a replica of an English commando knife issued during the last war. It was found in Sylvester's cab underneath the front passenger seat. We know it's not Sylvester's knife. It doesn't appear to be the murder weapon.
But possibly dropped there or almost certainly put there by the murderer.
Yes. Here, this is a US M3 American Army trench knife issued to the American commandos. Found about 2¼ miles further along the A30, hidden behind a GPO junction box. We're satisfied this is the murder weapon in the case of Sangha. Sangha lost, or was carrying that evening, a ceremonial knife, because he's a Sikh, or a karpan. His particular knife is missing. This is one similar to it, but the one that's missing has a blue band around it.
So anyone who found a karpan like this, but with a blue instead of the orange band, you want to hear from them. These keys, where do they come from? They look like clock keys or watch keys
the
or
pocket
something.
watch keys. They were found at the rear of Sylvester's car in the car park. I don't know if they have any connection with this case. I'm just curious to know how they got there.
Right. Now, you want, obviously, to find out who made the phone call to Hardeep Sangha. That was from the Lambton Road junction of the Great West Road, is it?
Yes.
Anybody who made a phone call on that night, which was, what, the 30th of March, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then there are the people that must have been in the vicinity at that time. This is where the car was abandoned on the south perimeter road of the airport.
Yes. Well, we're happy now that the car was there about 1:45. It seems about the same time. There was a man in his 50s in a red tracksuit jogging. About 1:45, there was a man with bushy hair and a bushy beard exercising his dog. Neither of those people we've been yet able to find. And later on, about the same time, a man was seen standing right next to the car. A man in his late 30s, early 40s, wearing a two-piece grey suit with grey or sandy-coloured hair. And he was seen actually by the car. That's about an hour after we know it was there.
This is Friday the 30th of March, or it may have been the early in the morning of Saturday, the 31st. Right, yes. Mr. Pole, thank you very much indeed. Now, if you think you can help in any way, please don't let a murder like this happen again. Looking for a tall man, possibly a knife freak, all the other clues you've heard. The number, if you know anything, 01811 8055. That's here at Crimewatch. Or you can call Heathrow Police Station direct. That's 01897 7373 01897 7373.
And if you haven't had a chance to write the numbers down, they're all on CFAX, if you have that, on page 186. They're there for the rest of the week, incidentally. And if you don't have a phone or you can't get through, drop us a line. Here's the address: Crimewatch UK, BBC TV Centre, London W12. The main number is easy to remember and we'll be here all evening. Please ring if you think you might be able to help in any way, however small.
In fact, as always, of course, we'll be back to tell you what develops in an hour and a half from now. That's on Crimewatch UK Update here on BBC One, about 25 to 12, directly after Film 84. Now, if you can't stay up till then, I know we say this every month, but it is important. Please don't have nightmares. Despite these sort of scary headlines last week, and their survey showing that most people are frightened to go out at night, the facts are that statistically you're likely to be the victim of a robbery with violence once in 500 years. which means, thankfully, the sort of crimes for which we've asked your help tonight are very rare indeed.
Maybe you can help make them rarer still. We'll be waiting for your call.
Till
Good
then,
night.
good night.